Welcome back to another .NET video. In this one, I'm going to be walking through RabbitMQ Streams in the RabbitMQ.Streams.Client NuGet package. So RabbitMQ is interesting because it provides us the ability to use queues as well as streams. And streams, like we saw in the last video that I made, you can connect to streams with the standard RabbitMQ client. But you also notice that RabbitMQ offers us a RabbitMQ Streams.Client. And this is distinct from the RabbitMQ client because it uses a different protocol under the hood to connect to the stream. So as opposed to using the AMQ protocol, AMQP, this uses RabbitMQ's Streams protocol. And they're built out for a number of different languages. So this is the .NET specific one. So this is what I want to walk through today and show you how to use this to connect to a stream in a RabbitMQ server in the context of, again, a .NET API. So let me just show you, I'm just going to publish this message to show you it running. So I have a consumer running. Let me just go to my, console logs here. And you can see that I picked up that message that I just published in my RabbitMQ management UI. And so I want to walk through how to set this up and a couple things that you'll have to do in order to be able to connect appropriately to your stream with the new streams, with the different streams protocol. So I use Docker just to pull down the RabbitMQ version 4, the management image. And if you've ever worked with RabbitMQ, you'll notice that the ports are a little bit different. I have the standard 5672 port exposed for the server, and I have the management plugin, so I have the 15672 port exposed also for the management UI. And in addition to these, I also have exposed 5552 on my local host, which 5552 is the default port that the Streams client uses to connect to RabbitMQ with the Streams protocol. So in order to get this running, you have to have that port exposed. What you can do inside of, if you're using Docker Desktop, all you can do is go to your running container, right-click or click this, and then you can go Open in Terminal. And Open in Terminal will give you a list, or will give you your Open Terminal window inside of your container. So now you can run that plugin command, which you can see that I have done. So I ran that plugin command, and you can see that it enabled these plugins, RabbitMQ Stream and RabbitMQ Stream Management. You should see now a Super Streams tab, and that really should be all the differences I think that you'll see, at least noticeably in the UI, but that should give you the ability to now connect to that 5552 endpoint. So I want to walk through how to do this locally. So again, I have a RabbitMQ service. If you haven't watched my previous video, it's a pretty long video. It's about over an hour, but it goes through all the details about how to connect with the RabbitMQ client to queues and streams. So if you haven't seen that, that's where a lot of this code I go in depth about. So I'm going to stick to some of that pattern that I showed you in the previous video, but now show you how to use the Streams NuGet package. So next thing you're going to want to do is, if you haven't done this already, make sure that you have the RabbitMQ Stream.Client installed. So in the last video, we were just specifically using the RabbitMQ client, which is their library that they provide. But the RabbitMQ Stream client is the one that we're going to be working with today, specifically to connect to streams. So once you have installed that, I've went ahead and created a method for get stream messages with Stream Protocol. And so this is where this gets a little interesting, because again, there's some nuances to this, and if you read the documentation, you'll kind of pick up on the fact that connecting is not the same way. You don't connect in the same way that you do with the regular client. One thing that immediately jumped out to me was the lack of credentials and the host. And so by default, this stream system config will use what's running on your local system. So for me, locally, I don't have to specify anything. If you deploy this somewhere, you'll need to provide endpoints. So I don't know, it should be here. You'll need to provide a list, like you get username, endpoints, and there's some other things too. It looks like there's an RPC timeout, but endpoints, you'll definitely need to specify where you need to connect to, as well as the password and username. So there's some nuances to this, but if you're connecting locally, you don't have to specify any of this, which is, to me, was a bit odd, because I was used to having to go, when I connect to RabbitMQ, I specify my credentials and host name in the connection factory. So I was like, well, how does it know what it's connecting to? It's built into this object here, the stream system config. There's a little bit of thing in the documentation about that, but I would definitely read through all the documentation just to get a feel for it. So once you've done that, then it's going to be the kind of the classic, like, if it doesn't exist, then create it, which is kind of similar to the queue declare and exchange declare, but in the context of a stream, they want us to first check if it exists. So the stream, if stream exists, or if it does not exist, which I provide my stream name, which is engine data stream, then I go ahead and create the stream using the stream spec. And this one I am showing you how to provide arguments. So one thing that is a bit nuanced in RabbitMQ is if you create a stream, you have to specify a max age. A max age value defines how long the data will remain on that active segment. So RabbitMQ behind the scenes uses Amnesia for the tables, and it uses segments to store the data. So max age is not directly comparable to time to live in like how you would think about it on a queue. Max age refers to the data on the segment, but there has to be one live segment always. So even though you specify max age, if you have data existing, if you have even one piece of data existing on a segment, that segment will stay active until a new segment is made. So it's kind of different than time to live, just in short, but you will need to specify max age. Also, the syntax for this is odd, and there's some nuances here that I want to get into, because if you build a stream and you specify, let's say, like 30 seconds as the max age, this is the syntax for seconds. So you do 30 and then lowercase s. If you pass in a filter, but let's say like, well, let's just say like I did like 30,000 seconds, right? Whatever that converts to in days. And then I tried to pass in a filter on my consumer of 1 day. It's not going to work. So I found there's a bit of nuance, but as far as how you go about defining this. So it'll really have to be up to you in terms of how your system is laid out. So you might want to think about what your max age will potentially be and how you want to filter based on that. So that'll kind of decide what you specify here. So in this particular case, I have a max age. And the reason I want to tell you, there's another nuance to this here. It does give you a max age in the stream spec object. Like, it gives you a property that you can set. But the problem that I have with this is that it gives you a time span. And so the temptation here is to do like, okay, time span, from days, and then, 30, right? So in your head, you kind of would think that that's comparable. But if you do this, that's gonna pass this and convert it into seconds. So seconds for 30 days is in the millions, right? I don't know how many seconds that is. So it would actually be S. So on the header. So again, it would mess up your filtering. So I think I would just go ahead and bypass this max age option and just pass that argument manually. That would be my recommendation, I think. Again, just to give you a little bit tighter control and just make sure that you know what's happening. I can show you what happens actually if you want. So I can let me actually undo that, and let me do that. And let's actually jump back into our stream here, and let's go ahead and delete our stream. Let's go back here, and now we have a max age specified. Let's go ahead and restart this, and let me go and execute this so it builds the stream, and now it's rebuilt. You see that? You see the value of the max age in seconds. So it doesn't pass it as what you would think to be in days. So again, that's just showing you like there might be some nuance using that time span object. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete this again, and I'm going to go ahead and kick it back to an argument. So again, you can pass whatever argument you need. This is just a dictionary of, I think, string and string. So that's probably what I would do, to be honest with you. So I'm just going to go and restart this to rebuild it. And then let's go and rebuild that and refresh. Let's go back to the stream, and you can now see, did I pass the wrong one? Oh, hold on. Max age. Oh, now it's not gonna. Now it's gonna cause me. It's probably not gonna work because now I'm in a video. Really? Did it not? Hold on. Did I not save? Hold on a second. Let me go back here. Let me delete that again. That's going to be very interesting, actually, if that doesn't. X max age. It should be fine. Unless we found out something else. All right, and it doesn't get stream protocol. What? Wait, how did I do that before? We clearly saw that I had a 30-day value before. Let me, because I'm doing it here. All right, wait, let me delete let me delete this. Hold on a second. I'm going to delete this queue, or just stream. Delete. Okay. And I'm going to rebuild that with my RabbitMQ client endpoint. What? Wait a second. That's how I got the 30-day value. Oh, that's going to be super annoying if you can't. What's it? Oh man, that's a fascinating find between the difference between both of those, because that's the same value. Max age 30. Do you have to use the max age? You can't just pass in. Oh man, that. Okay, so that's an interesting find that I guess we just documented, is that there's a difference between passing in max age and you can't just pass it manually to the arguments. Okay, that's really interesting. I wonder why that doesn't work. Does somebody know why? Because it should be. I wonder how if it treats those arguments differently. So you have to use the time span, I guess, from days where that is accurate to the nearest millisecond. Max age, but it's a time span. You can't get it to specify 30. How would you? Huh, okay, well, oh man, I wish you could do. That's unfortunate. I guess. All right. That is unfortunate. Wait, but how do you... What happens if I try to connect with this? If stream exists, max age 30. Let me restart this, and I want to see what actually happens if I try to connect with my stream protocol to that existing queue or stream. Oops. Do I get an error? No. But it... Oh, now that's really okay. Well, maybe I'm overthinking it, but you can see that there's some nuance. And obviously, it's not going to be in seconds. I misread that. It's milliseconds. Sorry. But that's an interesting one. So anyway, after we do that, after we build the queue, you'll have to figure out that. But next thing you need to do is going to be getting the, actually building the consumer. And so the main thing with this is what offset do you want? We looked at this in the last video. Offsets are going to be, your first, last, next, and then you have the timestamp. And you saw our struggle with timestamp in the previous video for getting the correct timestamp in seconds for the stream. That was annoying. But yeah, so you can specify the timestamp or the offset, and then this is where you're going to actually be processing the message handler on this, but it's a function. So again, there's some nuances here. Callback function where the consumer receives a message. The other one was an event handler. This is just a callback. So this takes in the stream name, context of the message, and the actual message itself. And you saw where it wrote, is this running? Let me see. Let's see if I can post a couple messages to that queue, or to that stream. Let me run that. Okay. Let's publish test 2, and you can see it gets picked up in the logs on the bottom right there. So let me set a breakpoint to show you this being hit, and going to publish another message, and it gets hit in the breakpoint. Let's go ahead and look at these, inspect these objects here. So the stream is the stream, the name of the stream. I want to look at that message object, and let's see what we get on there. So we get, looks like we get, what does annotations contain? Oh, is that the exchange value? Because that's from the default exchange. The routing key, interesting. Data is going to have our message data. What is the message header? Delivery count, durable, prior. Okay, so time to live. It's interesting that the message header has a time to live value on it. Which makes me almost question, like, I know that there's max age, but I don't think that you can specify a time to live on the message. Message offset 2, and then the size. So you can get some interesting things here. But again, this is just a consumer from this. I wonder, can you specify a time to live? I didn't think you could. Properties. Invalid properties will be ignored. Valid properties are, well, let's try it. Let's just see what happens if we set an expiration, which is, I think, the time to live value. Let's see what happens. It should be in milliseconds. So let's just publish that, and let's see what that looks like. Message header, time to, I don't think that gets like respected expiration, because that should be the time to live. Priority correlation ID, yeah. So I don't, again, there's Oh, base 64. Interesting. I don't think that valid. I don't think you can set a time to live on the message property for a stream, because that would have been, it's an unsigned integer and I put 10. Yeah, I don't think that gets respected. But it's interesting that it's there. Huh. Okay. And then let's just continue that. So it's going to pick up. Oh, wait. Was I... Hold on. Let me send that again. I might have been looking at the wrong... Let me look at that again. I might have been looking at the wrong message. Oh, wait. Okay, so there's 10 coming through on our message. But if that's... What happens to it? Does it actually expire? Or does it just not do anything? I don't think it gets... I'll tell you what, I'm gonna go ahead and... I don't think you can't purge a stream. Well, I put 10, and time to live uses milliseconds, I believe, so it should have already been wiped out. I just don't think that it is used in a stream, but it's interesting that it lets you set it as a valid header. So I don't know if anyone has... oh, wait, do I have to acknowledge it first? No, it definitely should be already off of that stream if that had that value. I don't think that value is used. I mean, if anyone else has had experience with expiration on a stream, I don't think that that's used. I think it all is dictated by that max age on the segment. So anyway, that's the general code for consuming. Obviously, I want to get into more of the difference, because this raises a lot of questions as to why you would use the streams protocol over just using, in the last video we saw the client protocol, or the client using the AMQP protocol, which is how you connect to a regular queue, albeit classic or quorum, whatever it is, but you can just specify the arguments, right, to be a queue type of stream. So if you can do that out of the box with this library and achieve communicating with the stream in a similar fashion as to how you would communicate with the queue, why would you use the streams protocol? And a lot of it comes down to throughput. So if you need very, very high throughput in near 1 million messages per second, you should use the streams protocol. If you don't need that high of throughput, you may be able to use the just RabbitMQ client. But again, I think it depends how you're using it. At least that's my understanding of it. So a lot of it comes down to you also have to make sure that your server is set up to be able to use streams. So you have to have that port exposed. You have to have those plugins enabled, and you have to make sure that you are building the correct connection here with a valid endpoint. So there's really 3 additional configuration steps that you have to make sure you get right. And again, that introduces some complexity in terms of now you're managing 2 distinct connections to your RabbitMQ server. Now you're managing different endpoints, plugins, ports. So a lot of it comes down to how do you want this configured? And it might not be possible, depending on if you even have access to your RabbitMQ server to be able to expose a new port. So you might get pushback to, for trying to enable some of that stuff. So if you want to use RabbitMQ streams and you don't want to go through the extra configuration steps to use the streams protocol because you don't feel like you're going to need to take advantage of the throughput gains, you can get away with just using the RabbitMQ client. At least that's kind of my understanding of it. The docs, RabbitMQ docs suggest to use the streams protocol, but just know that if you do want to do that, there is some additional configuration that you will have to do, as well as deciding how you want to manage it in code. And just understand, like we saw in this video, there is going to be some nuance between how you interact with streams here, like with the arguments, versus how you're going to interact with streams here. So again, that in itself may introduce some complexity for you, as well as maybe your potential team or a team that you're working on. So again, I think a lot of it comes down to system design, guiding you in terms of how you're making these decisions. But one possibility that you could think of if you want to flip-flop between protocols is, you saw that I have an endpoint, right, that I can label stream protocol, and then the other one is just get stream messages, which is using AMQP. I have those broken out into different methods. You could optionally pass a setting and pass a flag into that method to say, hey, do we want to use a stream protocol or do we want to use AMQP? So that could be a potential option, and then in your code you could adjust accordingly depending on which protocol you specify. And if it's a background task, like you saw in my last video, if you have it set up to use a background hosted service, you could do the same thing with like a settings table in the database or something like that. So it's kind of up to you how you want to build this out. But again, there's a lot that goes into the manual connection to RabbitMQ, and so just be mindful of what a new protocol would mean for you and your system, as well as the extra configuration. So that's all I got today. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one.